You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, me and Pat are going to talk about the Bulls heading into the offseason and the best mid-level exception targets for the Chicago Bulls, and ask the question, can the front office do enough this offseason to get the Bulls back into being a playoff team? We'll talk about that, plus the ownership paying the tax, and more right after this.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. That's the one and only Pat the Designer, host and creator of the Windy City Breeze and host of the Chicago Bears podcast over at ESPN 1000. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central. And every dayers, Locked On Bulls is free and available every day on your podcasting app of choice, as well as YouTube. Now, Pat, let's get into it, man. The offseason is officially upon us. And so now everyone's pivoting from talking about the finals, and, the typical, what can you learn from this team, all those typical topics, into now focusing more on what their individual teams can do. Now, me and we've done a pretty good job, I would think, at educating the audience and fan base of the Bulls to what to expect this offseason. The Bulls really only have a mid-level exception at their disposal unless they go out and do some trades, things like that. So we're going to look at the best mid-level exception targets for the Chicago Bulls. Pat, you want to take this? Do you want to start off this one?
Derrick Rose. No, I'm just playing. Oddly enough, right? Not full mid-level exception.
Do the Red Fox.
Not the full. Not full mid-level exception. Full mid-level exception. But Derrick Rose is a name that probably will be thrown around in there realistically. Sure. I think a lot of the mid-level exception guys, to me, you're talking about long shot guys, right? Like, would you throw some money at a guy like Josh Richardson who made 12, right? Bulls had to have 12 basically to use if we're, again, we do have to caveat this, right? We have 12 to use if Jerry lets us go into the luxury tax.
And technically, we also have a biannual exception of $4.5 million as well.
Yeah.
But again, that would hard cap us, I think. So, listen. We have tools at our disposal, and I think that's where a lot of Bulls fans, they get confused. They say, oh, well, the Bulls really don't have assets. Technically, we do. Just, is Jerry going to allow us to do it? Go ahead,
we use them. I think realistically, you throw the full thing if you have the opportunity to at Jakob.
The full thing, all right, Zion.
Whoo, you gotta. Jeez, that's on me. I gotta hold that one. That is for sure.
Zion Williamson and porn star.
It's crazy out here. It's amazing that we still have jobs, bro. They just letting us get away with this. It's crazy out here. No, but I think even right with the possibility of bringing Vooch back, we've talked about kind of running a bigger lineup out there at times where we need to rebound the ball better. I would still throw that full mid-level exception at a guy like Jakob. He only made 8 last season. Unless you think Toronto's going to throw him 15, I think 12 probably is where he lands. And to me, that gives you a guy who actually could play off of Vooch at the same time. And you would be able to have that rebounding battle. You still have Drummond coming off your bench. You have a little more depth in the rebounding world. There is I feel like we focus so much on the point guard, and that's very important, by the way, very important. But there is still a need for better rebounding on this team. And unless you're finally going to get Billy Donovan, just sit him down and be like, hey, that water boy plays for us, right? Unless you're finally going to do that, I think you got to still go out and get some rebounding help. I would love to see a guy like Jakob come to the Bulls.
Here's the thing, though, and I thought about this earlier today, is that the Bulls, we don't rebound well, but keep in mind, we don't try. Part of Billy Donovan's system is once the shot goes up, at least on the offensive side of the ball, we go set up on defense.
Yeah.
I think if we kind of change that a little bit, we can see better rebounding numbers. But also, to your point, what if we're really overlooking this and AK really does say we need some size, we need some shooting? Marco, it's really your time, bro. Ride or die. Like, I wouldn't hate it only because, like, do I think it's going to be successful? No, but listen, you got this guy on a
At
pretty,
least we get to see it.
a pretty decent contract, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like $1.8 million. Like, use the guy. He's on a guaranteed contract or cut him.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and that's the tough part about this, right? Like the Bulls can go out and literally offer this contract to a big man and or point guard, one or the other. But the biggest question mark that the Chicago Bulls have coming into the season is, do you have that guy already? And I think we have to ask ourselves this: Are the Bulls basically running the Tom Thibodeau philosophy? Because if y'all remember, Jimmy Butler didn't get on the floor for like 3 years in meaningful time.
First year, not at all. Second year was those spot minutes, and then
Year,
by the end of the second year, wasn't that the Luol Deng injured season? And he was playing more by the end of that second.
He was playing more by the end of that year, but it was just like, go out there, play defense, don't F nothing up. I will punch you in the throat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was no freedom, there was no allowances. So are we seeing a situation similar to that where the Bulls are kind of doing that here? But the guys that we brought in, you have to think about the guys we've drafted. They're like the youngest dudes in the draft every time.
Yeah,
outside of Ayo, Dalen, I believe, is the youngest player in the draft. Pat Will was the youngest player in the draft. Marko Simonovic is what? 20. I never get ages right. By the way, Fred VanVleet's 29. Somebody pointed that out in the comments the other day.
I saw that too. I was like, whoa.
I was like, dang, Fred. First off, you're aging gracefully. But Marco's what? Is he 24? 23? Right? Still very young players. And I'm not saying, right, that gives them an excuse to not play. There are players that are younger than them that are having an impactful season. But it might really just be the philosophy that this Bulls team is putting forth. But we're just at the beginning stages of them, so we haven't seen that philosophy kind of play itself all the way out.
I mean, yeah, there's enough to say that, and I mean, you had the great point on the episode I think maybe it was last week, in which you said that AK's really treating the G League as an internal drafting stash, right? So. We'll see. Like, I know Marco and around the Bulls fan base, rightfully so, right? I'm not judging anybody for it. It's kind of over Marco. And it's because Marco's been this product that we heard so much about. Like, he was compared to Jokic and even Vooch when he initially came in. We just haven't seen anything meaningful from him. And the time he has got in, all we've seen is the young guy get dunked on and nuts in his face. So it's like, you got to look out for that. So
he's done a great Mariah Mills impression on the court. I mean, no, is that
wow? But with that said, and unless you've watched every Windy City Bulls game, you may not understand that Marco does have his offensive skill set is where you needed to be. It's just his defense is not anywhere that you trusted. But again, how much is he going to really learn from the G League level anymore? So, maybe that's to be said. But to get back to the original question that I did present is, what mid-level exception targets would I go after? Harrison Barnes is high on my list.
Really?
Harrison Barnes is high on my list. I think Harrison brings more size than what we've had at the power forward position. I think that he could be a good mentor for Patrick Williams. I don't think he's going to try to break the bank in any deal either. I think he's understood how to play within a system that he is not the first, second, or third option offensively, but still get off a respectable number of shots. Not a hugely efficient player by any stretch of the imagination, but I would target him with at least a portion of that mid-level, if not that full mid-level. And I do think if the Bulls do plan, like me and you have talked about, for Kobe really to be that starting point guard, re-sign Ayo, basically have Caruso, Ayo as the backup there, get a guy with size that can actually be the power forward so you don't have to play Caruso there. I think you can do a lot worse than Harrison Barnes. I know some Bulls fans are going to go with that. And as much as I hate to say this as well, do not be surprised if there's talk about Dillon Brooks as a mid-level exception target. I'm just saying.
I can't. Here's the thing about Dillon Brooks, right? Because I am the person who I understand the AJ Przinsky guy, right? I understand that guy where he's not on your team so you hate him. He's on your team so you love him. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can love Dillon Brooks on this team.
Oh, bro, I agree with you. That's why I said I'm just trying to be realistic, right? Because I can absolutely see AK, and that's the thing. AK really doesn't bite on low character guys, so I do think it's unlikely. Let me be clear there.
Yeah.
But I do think that there may be a world in which they strike out on every free agent, and teams also don't want to deal with Dylan Brooks' headache. And the Bulls and Dylan Brooks are both left sitting there looking at each other afterwards, like, "Hey, we ain't getting no younger, so we might as well do it." Shout out if you know where that quote came from.
That's tough. I'm really trying to like it's slim pickings out there for the Bulls right now. I mean, here's a tough one, right? Here's a tough one. Former Bull. Because I was looking at guys that maybe have been on the outs trying to work their way back in.
Okay.
Is there any Chris Dunn love in the water?
Well, this
Chris
front
Dunn
office
is
didn't draft Chris Dunn.
Yeah.
So
I believe he's still over 2.3 steals a game.
Yes, he still is crazy with steals, but I don't think that they go a point guard that can't shoot if they don't bring Io back, maybe. Yeah. I just don't necessarily think that that's the route they'll go if they do bring Io back, but hey, weirder things have happened. I would say rather than Dunn, I would say that maybe Max Strus, maybe he's an option out there.
Hey, I just need to point this out, by the way. I don't know how much he actually played this season. I'm not going to sit here and act like I followed everything Chris Dunn did. Defensively, he's still amazing. But his last 3 games of the season, 26, 10, and 8, 19, 8, and 14, 22, 7, and 8 versus the Nuggets, Thunder, and Lakers.
You remember, I told you, like, Chris Dunn, I would never forget, he had a 3 or 4 game stretch where he literally averaged like 16 and 11 for the Bulls. And everybody's like, we got our point guard of the future. And I don't think he scored a basket for the next 5 games after that. Like, it's just, you just never know with Chris Dunn. Like,
here's the thing. I'm literally just speaking on from literally just running the offense, facilitating, defensive purposes. We've seen Billy be able to kind of get more out of guys at the point guard position than maybe, in his career. I mean, not here in Chicago really, but in his career, maybe he's a guy that you could take a flyer on. I don't know. That tells you where realistically we are with this team, because there's a lot of names you're throwing out there just to see if stuff sticks.
Yep. So we'll see, man. We'll see what happens with the Bulls. But next up on the list, we're going to be talking about, can the front office do enough to get the Bulls back in the playoffs this season? But before we do that, I got to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, and that is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to play daily fantasy sports, and it's easy. Now, while basketball is no longer going on, well, NBA, you still got the WNBA, you got other things you can bet on. But PrizePicks is simple. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they're going to score more or less than the PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. It's just that simple. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes in the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, aka football, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, PrizePicks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, PrizePicks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Pat, let's get into it, man, with this front office. Can the front office do enough to make the Bulls a playoff team this offseason? We talked about kind of the limitations, what ownership is placed on it, what realistic limitations we have just by the nature of what we have available at our disposal. Playing team this year, playoff team last season. Can we at least get back to being, we would have to be one of the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference to avoid that play-in scenario?
That depends on what the players' mentality is this season.
Mm-hmm.
Zach LaVine can play.
Yeah. Fully healthy, hopefully, too, to start the season.
I'm in the mindset that we're probably running this thing back, which means DeMar DeRozan is probably a part of this team. Nikola Vucevic can play. Kobe White seems like he's kind of gotten the facilitating thing a little bit more in order. He's probably going to be our point guard heading into next season. That's a good enough team to be top 6. And I know people are going to look at that and be like, but we saw this and we saw an absent. I believe Will Perdue said this. The Bulls didn't have a lack of leadership this season. The Bulls had an absence of leadership.
That's a completely different thing.
And if Zach LaVine turns himself into a leader, DeMar DeRozan becomes more of a leader that actually leads his team in the direction it needs to, whoever it is, right? Actually, we see some leadership on this team, somebody speaking up, calling people out when they're playing down, not sitting here doing the whole buddy kumbaya thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this Bulls team can be a top 6 team. I think that this Bulls team can be closer to the team we saw at the beginning of this, because you can't tell me what we just saw from the Miami Heat isn't a huge black eye and slap in the face of AK. The Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler just dragged some dude. He dragged a dude called Max Strus to the finals.
Hey, lay off Strus, bro.
Hey, my boy, Strus ain't that good. Strus got hot. Strus got hot, right? But guess what? Because here's the thing. They wasn't good all season. They was just okay. Everybody was just okay. Dragged them to the finals. They lost their second best player, still dragged them to the finals. That's how you build a winning culture. That means that a player in your organization is setting the standard for the players that are there that your coach has already set, and that's being put out on the court.
Yeah.
It took Patrick Beverley for 14. What did he play? He played 22 games here?
22, 23, something like that.
For somebody to finally say, Zach LaVine probably need to be shooting the basketball.
Don't pass the ball, just shoot. That was one of the best quotes of the season.
Like, what do we do? Like, leadership is going to be so key to this team. And I think it's the only way that we see them get top 6. And I don't think that the Bulls need to add that much. Yeah. We've talked about it. Pat Bev ain't that much. I love him. I'm glad he was here. But like in the grand scheme of players we could have added, Pat Bev was, he was that guy, right? Like we would have loved Russ. We'd have loved, right? There's a bunch of names on it, and then it's Pat Bev. So I think that, can the front office do enough? Yes, but it's going to take the players actually taking control of the situation that they're in and for them to get to that top 6 spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I know that as a collective, like, the Bulls Nation right now is kind of down on this team, and it makes sense of what we've seen over time. But, like, I do think that a healthy Zach LaVine to start the season, more, streamlined roles for everyone, depending on the acquisitions that we can make with the assets that we have, that they could fight for us. I'm not going to say that they necessarily going to be like a de facto top 6 team, but if it all comes together, we have relative health. I think we can. But it's going to take having a more balanced roster. Is going to take rebounding the ball better. Is going to take better execution, especially defensively kind of tight games as well. Yeah. But there's a chance of it. I'm not going to say that I'm overly hopeful for it, because right now I've learned one thing, and that's is to hope for the worst expect the worst when it comes to the Chicago Bulls, but hope for the best. But I think ultimately, there's more talent on this team than what their record would have indicated last season. It's just putting in the right mixture of talent, character, and whatever else to get the most out of that talent that we have on this roster.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I don't look at Zach LaVine and say there's a bunch of players better than him in the NBA. I don't look at Zach LaVine and just say half of the players we saw in the playoffs are leaps and bounds better than him. What I look at the players that were in the playoffs and say is they led their teams in a better way. Because you can't look at Zach LaVine as the number 2 or the number 3 option, or like he's supposed to be our leader. That's what they said end of the season, right? DeMar DeRozan said he's our leader. Vooch said he's our leader. Pat Bev, he's our leader. The biggest growth that Zach LaVine can take from one offseason to another, and if you got anything from Patrick Beverley, it's leadership. And I think that right after that, I could put anything I want around you.
Yeah.
I can put a basic point guard. I can leave Kobe White there. I can play Dalen Terry more. I can put Marco on the floor, because you know what? Zach LaVine's going to get to a point where he's like, sit him down. He can't. No, he's messing up what we doing. We got to make this happen. We got to do this, coach. I love you. This ain't the move. He's got to get to that point. And if he's not going to get to that point, then you got the wrong guy leading your team.
Well, that's the thing. You can have your production leader isn't necessarily always going to be the same rah leader you have that motivates guys. It's just that if you know that, then you need to build that into your roster. I just don't know. Like Zach at times is going to be the guy that, and we saw it last season. Sometimes he just didn't have the supporting cast where he goes out there and he performs on the court the way that you needed him to perform to try to get you in games. But I just don't know if Zach's ever going to be that emotional. I'm going to motivate guys. I'm going to take the team and I'm going to put you in your place, not disrespectfully, but I just don't know if Zach has that in him. The whole fake deep, we got to go out there and get that fake deep voice thing that he does, bro.
Talks. It's really how he talks.
No, it's not.
Bro. Like, it's really how he talks.
No, I've seen Zach talk when he's not, fake, bro. That he literally when he's we didn't execute out there. Like I'm not saying the man doesn't have a deep voice, but he definitely adds a couple of bases in that.
You said he goes from being just Zach LaVine to Scottie Pippen. That's what it is. You going that deep? It's just.
And I just said I wasn't gonna mess up my summer. I wasn't gonna mess up my summer.
I don't know, bro. Like I don't know. I think here's the thing, right? The problem is, and maybe Zach LaVine will never become that player. The problem is you don't have that player.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The Bulls went 14-9 with that player. You don't have that player, whether it's a point guard, power forward, whoever it is. Your list of four guys is Zach LaVine, seems like a good guy. DeMar DeRozan, definitely a good guy. Vooch, good guy. P. Will, timid. And who? Kobe? Goofy.
Dalen,
maybe.
He could eventually be that guy. I wouldn't expect it next season, but he could eventually turn into that guy. But we need leadership, bro. And that's one of the toughest things because it's hard to quantify leadership, right? And just because there's of course there's people who universally, any situation you put them in, they're going to be able to lead. Yeah. But there's some people who, if you put them in the wrong mix, that leadership qualities that they may have shown on another team don't necessarily come out. So that leadership part is the hardest part to find. We can go out and find a three-point shooter. We can go out and find a guy that averages, quote unquote, as many rebounds, right? The harder thing to quantify is that leadership thing. Yeah. And so they got their work ahead of them. That's for sure.
I think the front office can do the basics, but it's really just about this team taking that step. There's too much talent on this team. Like they beat everybody.
Yeah.
They literally we beat Denver. We beat Miami 3 times this year. We were 2 minutes away from beating them again. We beat Boston multiple times. We beat Milwaukee multiple times. We literally beat we beat Philly finally with Joel Embiid on the floor. We beat everybody. We also lost to everybody.
Yeah. So, hey, we'll see, man. But next up, we got to talk about it. Ended on why the ownership should be paying the luxury tax this season. So let's go ahead and get into that. But before we do, everydayers, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. And just to remind you guys, it's free and available on every podcasting platform as well as YouTube and the Odyssey app. But Pat, let's get into it, man. Luxury tax, Bulls. A lot of what we have talked about today has that undertone of we could have this, but we probably won't because of the luxury tax. And I think I understand that it's probably still not going to happen. And old man Jerry's probably looking at it and like, what tax? But when you look at the specific scenario that the Bulls are in, that they have $20 million worth of a contract in Lonzo that's not getting on the court. And AK did say in the season-ending presser, he's ready to present it to ownership. I think that this could be one of those seasons where hopefully Jerry does allow us to go into the tax just by the nature of making the team the most competitive version. Because just by going into the tax, we can use the full mid-level exception. Yeah. We can use the biannual exception. That's $16.5 million that you can dish out for players. That completely changes the complexity from us talking about only being able to use $7.5 to $8 million of the mid-level exception. That can get you a whole additional player. So, Pat, do you think that, not will they, but do you think this should be a year, even though we're not the contender that Jerry Reinsdorfer's talked about he's willing to pay the luxury tax for? Is this a year that it's reasonable to pay the tax just to put the team in the best situation possible?
Who's the player worth paying it for, though?
But that's the thing. It wouldn't necessarily be one. It'd be a combination that I look at it as. Like, right? So it's you going out and getting – it's the difference between getting just a guy who can come in and fill in between getting a 3-point shooter and somebody who can rebound and play the power forward. Like it's that aspect that I'm looking at it with.
And I guess I still, who are the two? You know what I mean? Like, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with going out, and I guess maybe you get a role player, but I think the role player list also isn't that good either this season, right? So I don't know if, like, I feel like that's a what is it called when, like, it's like a break in case of emergency type of thing, especially with the Bulls, right? Because you're not going to get that many opportunities to do it with Jerry. Is this the off season to do it?
Well, keep in mind too, I think that also we got to keep in mind that the luxury tax isn't calculated until the end of the season. So even if the Bulls are technically in the luxury tax this season, if it's just not working, you can trade off assets at the trade deadline, get back under that.
True. That's true. I mean, I'm fine with us doing it. I always ask, the question I always ask is, like, is this the season that's worth it? Like, do you think, like, to me, I'm holding that trump card in my hand when, you know, I feel like the Bulls are okay. Hey, we're one piece away. We're literally, like, we're one piece away from, like, yes, we were 5th in the East this year. If we add this piece in this offseason, we can be number 1 in the East the entire season and not lose that spot. We can go into the Eastern Conference Finals. We can get to, right, very much like, I mean, that's pretty much what, and now they picked the wrong player. My God, they picked the wrong player. But that's pretty much what Garpex did, right?
Well, no, Garpex,
because when we went into the luxury, who we get?
Situation, it was because Derrick Rose was hurt.
It was because Derrick was hurt. That's true.
It was because Derrick was hurt. So precedence, maybe, if you want to look at it that way.
Is our team in as bad a state, though? Like, that team was Derrick. It was Joe too, but, like, it was just like, hey man, like, without Derrick, like, we really not doing nothing.
Yeah.
But then again, like, who'd we go get? Did we get Powell that year?
No, that's the year we got the shooting guard that would have been perfect next to Zach LaVine that we ended up trading because we got back under the tax before he came back. The foreign guy. What was his name?
Marco?
Yeah, Marco Bellinelli.
Marco played for us.
Yeah, that's who we got out and got.
Oh, we did trade him before. Oh,
we traded him before Derrick was fully healthy. That's right. Yeah.
That was stupid.
and he was solid for us, bro. Like, seeing him next, keep his year in Chicago, the stats don't pop out to you, but you got to keep in mind what it would have been next to Derrick Rose. 9.6 points per game, a 35% 3-point shooter. Keep in mind, that was before we saw people continually average 38 and 40%. Good. That was solid. 39% overall from the field. But imagine what that would have been next to Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose never had somebody who can really shoot the 3 next to him. The next closest one to that was Rip. So Marco would have been nice.
Who Kyle play with?
Kyle was there, but we didn't use him as like.
You know what? I can't say that though. Mike Dunleavy was a dog.
Oh,
Mike Dunleavy shooting the tray ball. But he played
small forward.
Old man Mike was a dog though. Yeah, he played small forward for us, but old man Mike was a dog with that 3 ball. Who was that? Was that Giannis that elbowed him in the forehead? That man came out.
No, that was
lacing.
Rondo, wasn't it?
Was that Rondo that did that? That man came out lacing, bro.
Rondo knocked out Brad Miller's tooth in the playoffs. That's what that was.
Rondo was wild, bro.
Bro, young Rondo was a mug.
Hey,
bro.
Kirk was on that man too. Kirk was like, "Hey, we throwing them things. Let's go." He didn't expect that. He's like, "He from Kansas."
That's funny.
Nah, I just I'm okay with the Bulls going into the tax. I guess I don't see the player that does that for you, right? Like, is that D'Lo? Right, like is D'Angelo Russell, and I know people kind of going like, but is D'Angelo Russell a name where it's like?
Let me address this too. Everybody who Fred VanVleet, DeJounte Murray,
better than anything
Russell,
we have right now.
Keep in mind, they're better than anything that we have, and better than Pat Bev, who pushed us to go 14-9. Like, like Bulls fans get so narrow vision, and it's like, if it's not this perfect player, it's like, oh well, why would we go out and do it? Because it's better than anything we have. Period. But keep it going.
D'Lo to me isn't a D'Lo to me is he gonna pass the ball well enough?
See, D'Lo,
like I want D'Lo to score.
Yeah, exactly. Like, to me, D'Lo is like, again, much like the thing I said about Dylan Brooks. Nobody else wants us. We ain't getting no younger. We might as well do it.
We might as well do it. We might as well do it. I don't know, man. Like I feel like D'Lo's a guy that you want to go out to score. Maybe like is Schroeder a guy to go into that tax for? Is Schroeder going to cause you to go into that tax? Gabe Vincent. I don't think we'd need to go into the tax for Gabe Vincent, but maybe. I don't see names on here that at least at the point guard spot that I'm like going to the tax.
I think you're zeroing in on it being one name. It's not just necessarily about it just being one player. It's just about how much we can improve the team overall with multiple things. Like
that's true.
So I get what you're saying though, because there's no one. I mean, yeah, there are one players that I would be willing to, but it's like they're not coming for the mid-level exception. So
Russ, like if we could find a way to finagle, which they actually can do, finagle everything so that they can be like, give Russ $17 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check. I don't know. I'm not mad at it, but I also don't love it either. I guess it would be one of those situations where it's like, oh, they did it. That's cool. Who we getting? Oh, we got that guy. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. But still, at the end of the day, can Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic get the job done? And I mean, you also have to take that into account as well. Is that the situation that the Bulls could be in where I'm keeping the three together because it seemed like DeMar's still working with everybody. So I don't know if DeMar's going anywhere. But is there a situation where Jerry says no to the tax and that forces the hand of trading DeMar DeRozan to get back some of those role players?
It could be. It really could be. I think ultimately, I want to choose my words wisely on this one. Is that if Jerry does say no to the luxury tax, which is the most reasonable and realistic thing, if AK sees this is the year to make his move, we could see DeMar traded. We could see, definitely not P. Will, but maybe we could see Alex Caruso traded if you net back multiple pieces for where he is. Like I do think that could be what it goes into, or the thing that we've been talking about that's most realistic. AK could go to Jerry. Jerry says, no, I'm going to the luxury tax. And AK could say, all right, bet DeMar's coming off the books next year. Maybe now we file for the career-ending injury exception for Lonzo or something next offseason, which is also an option. And then we try to make our move. So there's that option as well. So
and the most insane thing is that we're going to wait out Lonzo. I know we are. Yeah. I know we are. Like I would be so shocked if we actually did anything to get out of Lonzo's money. That would probably surprise me. Out of anything, that would be the most surprising thing that could happen this offseason. We could go out, we could trade for DeJounte Murray, we could sign Fred VanVleet. If we found a way to actually get out of Lonzo's money, not found a way, if we used the way to get out of Lonzo's money, that would surprise me the most about Jerry Reinsdorf and would actually tell me that maybe Michael's doing a little more to run the show than Jerry is.
That's very fair. And I do think that, I mean, listen, we traded Derrick Rose. Now, we did give Derrick Rose a couple of years to try to get back, and he never really got back in gear. But, like, this loyalty to Lonzo, and I can understand if that we were doing one of the options and it meant he wouldn't get his money. Either option we do, he's still getting his money. But the loyalty to, like, not come off that deal is so confusing to me because, listen, if he can make a comeback, who's to say he won't come back to the Bulls regardless? He's going to get his money, but, like, I just don't get it. That's one of the things that I don't get, but, hey, it is what it is, man.
Is this you got to think about this. It's not just Jerry that's loyal anymore. AK also loyal.
Yeah.
Because Jamal Murray just won a championship. Jamal Murray played what? 70 games in the span of 3 years?
That's a great point.
They really might wait on Lonzo. I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. But hey, follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Appreciate y'all for showing love, man.
Yeah, you can follow me at CEO Haize, the CEO Haize. Make sure you follow us collectively at Locked On Bulls. And thank you for tuning in and making Locked On Bulls your first listen every single day. For Pat the Designer, I'm Haize. This has been Locked On Bulls. We about this mug. Peace, y'all.
Peace.